Hey everybody, what's up? Big Jason. I'm here with Brian Kurtz. How's it going, Brian?
Hey Jason, how are you? I'm psyched to be here.
Awesome. So today we're going to do an ad breakdown of a letter that Scott wrote for Joe Polish. As you may or may not know, Scott, my best friend, he tragically had a massive stroke this past Christmas, and a few weeks later, he sadly passed away. So his family has asked me to continue his legacy. So what I've been doing is updating his course and doing ad breakdowns of his hottest sales letters. And today this letter that he wrote for Joe Polish was actually in 2001. It was a $10,000 mastermind. And I've heard people say, yeah, I think they mentioned like Frank Kern was one of the first big ones, but and nothing against Frank Kern, but this was 2001, so that's pretty impressive. And in Hottest Sales Letters Volume 1, Scott mentioned that he got a 21% response and $250,000 in sales to only 176 people. So that's pretty impressive, right, Brian?
It is, and in full disclosure, we'll get into the details of this letter. But what Joe was doing, back then in 2001, Joe was basically owned the category of carpet cleaners, and so these we'll talk about the boot camp that he talked about that Scott talks about in the letter. But the numbers here are astounding, and I think it's a perfect example of taking a great letter, great copy, married to a perfect list, and that the copywriter really understanding the list universe to the degree that you could get that kind of response rate from such a small list. So you got a small, hungry market, starving market, as
Right.
Gary would say, and but you can't just you can make some money with mediocre copy to that starving market. But when you start doing copy like Scott did here, which I'll point out a lot of the techniques that he used, you're basically getting the most out of the perfect list with ideal copy. The other piece that's very interesting, it was a 10K mastermind. I think though, if you paid monthly, you had to pay 1,000 a month, so it was 12K.
Right.
And back then in 2001, $12,000 masterminds were not commonplace like they are today. And not only that, these are carpet cleaners.
Yeah.
These are guys who, if they were, some of these guys aren't even making $100,000 a year, and they're going to invest, 12%. We'll say 12,000 of 100, and I'm using rough numbers. $12,000 of their year, 12% of their yearly gross income or more, because a lot of them are making 50 and 60,000 a year to be in this group. So the persuasion that you had to do to get them to invest in something like this to kind of pay out in the future was not the mentality of someone who's in carpet cleaning. And yet Scott, I think, was able to do that. And we'll talk about some of those things that he did to do that. But there's so many techniques here to get this audience of people who are not used to spending any money on marketing, any money on personal improvement, any money on building their business, except trying to go around a small town with a van with their 800 number printed on the van and hoping to get some carpet cleaning jobs.
Right.
So very, very interesting, the whole psyche. And in full disclosure, you need to know that not only was I'm still very close friends with Joe Polish. I was even in 2001. I've known him for like 20 years. But not only that, I've spoken at these carpet cleaner conferences so that he would get, and I'm not saying I'm the best speaker in the world, but that he would get people like me who were mainstream direct marketers to come to a carpet cleaning conference and teach marketing. Shows you how Joe valued his audience. And then we can talk about how Scott totally cashed in on that based on the techniques that he used in his letter. So you got me going there. There was there's a lot to pack into this beyond just those amazing results. So the numbers are great. Glad you said them. We should really dive in and see how you can get so much from such a small list that's so targeted because of the techniques and because of how you're talking to that audience.
Sure. And Joe Polish said about this promo, he said, He recently wrote a letter for my $10,000 per year Platinum Plus coaching club that pulled an amazing 20% response. If you get a chance to hire him, don't think twice. Scott's copywriting and consulting services are essentially free because he makes you so much more money than you otherwise would. He could charge double what he does now and it'd still be a bargain. I can't recommend him highly enough. Brian, so I think it's important to note what Joe said. He said Scott's copywriting and consulting services. And then also, I know some specifics about Joe and Scott's arrangement that I think that would benefit freelancers. So I'd like to ask you some questions at the end of the breakdown that could help freelancers, if you don't mind too.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. In fact, if you watched a speech that Dan Kennedy gives like today is about, I think he has a guy on a cartoon of a guy, copywriter on the screen saying, we'll write for food. And he basically says to be just a copywriter, work for hire is crazy, that the copywriter's in a great position to be a consultant and to work on all aspects of a marketing campaign. And I would be very happy to talk about that.
Awesome. Now, before we do that, I want to just ask you real quick, what was your relationship with Scott, and what'd you think of Scott as a person versus just a copywriter?
Yeah, I mean, just an awesome dude. He reached out to me numerous times. He was on my list, and I got the sense he was in the best way possible. He was a bit of a stalker, which I love because I'm a stalker myself. When I say stalker, I mean you find people who you either resonate with or you respect or you want to learn from, and you just follow everything that they do. And so it was funny. I think secretly he was following my career at Boardroom and all the stuff that I did since I was working with all the great copywriters. And I was sort of following him because, I've made it my business to know all the Gary Halbert copy cubs and road dogs and associates, whether it's John Carlton or Amit Suneha or Doberman Dan or Scott Haines. And there are more. And I just, but I made it my business to know, because, my new book, The Advertising Solution, one of the 6 profiles in that book is Gary Halbert. So, and when I did my Big Titans event in 2014, if Gary Halbert were alive, he would have been right on that stage with, Dan Kennedy and Gary Bencivenga and Perry Marshall and Joe Sugarman and Jay Abraham, et cetera, et cetera. So having said all that, my relationship to Scott was sort of a secretive one for many, many years, both ways. I mean, I think I said he was stalking me, I was stalking him. And I guess we had some minor correspondence. I knew of him. And then I think the breakthrough was like in 2014 when he didn't come to my Titans event for various reasons. And he just, we started getting into an email correspondence. And then I told him I was coming to Vegas because I go to Vegas every year. And we got together there. I think there was also a mastermind with John Carlton that you were at, Jason. And we spent a lot of time together. Joe Sugarman came over to that. And all of a sudden, this was the friendship had already been bonded before we even met, or that we might have only met briefly, like at a seminar or something. And then, after that, I sent him, just because I wanted to, I sent him the full Titans package, which had all the swipe files and the Bencivenga interviews and the videos of the event, because I just knew that he would put that to such good use, which he did. I think you even found it in his stuff.
I did.
When you were cleaning out his stuff. So that was and I think you actually took a picture of the note I sent him. I mean, we had really started bonding and created this incredible friendship and mutual respect. He was just, he was so enthusiastic about the craft of copywriting. He also was working with one of my clients, another Halbert protege, Amit Suneha. And so I was doing some copy work with Scott on that. So we actually got to work together, which was fun. And then, I guess my hope was that, I'd sent them the Titans package with, it's a $2,000 package. I sent it to him. This is a joke in my mind now. because we were talking about his course, and I think you had asked me, do I have this course? I said, no, I don't. I never really asked him for it because I don't ask for stuff. Now, should I have bought it? Of course I should have bought it. I'm an idiot. But I didn't buy it. I hadn't thought about it. And maybe I was secretly hoping he would just send it to me because I sent him the Titans package. But because I didn't ask for it, shame on me. But boy, that product, which I have seen over someone's shoulder not that long ago, is freaking awesome. So I have just tremendous, mad respect for Scott. I was super sad, to hear of his passing. And when you asked me to be involved in this project, I was all in. I mean, you kind of had me at hello. I'm doing something for Scott,
Yeah, it was great that we were able to hang out with Scott in Vegas during the March Madness event you guys always do.
Yeah, that was super. And we hung out, of course, at Carlton's event, which was also in Vegas. So, yeah, we got some really good. I mean, yeah, we had that dinner together. Yeah, we just had some. And then you have that picture of me, you, and Joe Sugarman and Carlton.
Yep.
And Stan Dahl. That was just great. I mean,
cool.
So yeah, I mean, short but sweet relationship, I would say. I obviously didn't have the depth of the relationship with him that you had, and I regret that. And I regret that he left us so young, with so much of a legacy in such a short amount of time.
Yep. Thanks for that. And lastly, considering your wealth of experience at Boardroom and working with A-plus copywriters and trying to beat controls, recently, I got a hold of Scott's lists and I emailed all his past prospects and customers to let them know that, he had passed away. And one of the people that reached out to me who had no idea was his longest running client. And I can't mention his name as you'll hear in a second, but he basically told me that he was still running 3 controls that Scott wrote. One was over 14 years ago and 2 were 10 years ago. He just basically transferred word for word from direct mail to online, and he basically goes to events in his niche every year with the open checkbook trying to find copywriters to beat Scott's controls, and he can't find anybody to beat them. They're so good. He basically said he's embarrassed because of how much money he made from Scott's copy. And I asked him offline, I said, look, I know you're still running his controls and everything, but is there any way that when I update Scott's course and his hottest sales letters that I could include Scott's copy that he did for you? And he said, you know what? Because of what Scott meant to me and, how much, I cared for him as a person and not just a copywriter, with a few conditions, I'm going to let you do that. So what would you say to someone who never experienced Scott, his course, or have seen any of his sales letters? If they're maybe a new copywriter or maybe a veteran copywriter who's always looking for good copy, what would you say to them about the chance to get their hands on Scott's controls?
Yeah, you're preaching to the converted when it comes to swipe files. I mean, I gave away 1,000 pages of swipe files at my Titans event. None of those were Scott's, only because Scott never wrote for me at Boardroom. But I think that anybody who's in copywriting, marketing, whatever, that doesn't have a killer swipe file is obviously does not have a library that's worth it for the long run in terms of having at your fingertips tried and true promotions. Because while I like to say stealing is a felony, stealing smart is an art. And having an amazing swipe file and knowing how to use copy platforms in your own copy. And it's funny because you can take stuff even from what we're going to talk about today. Here's a letter Scott wrote to carpet cleaners for a mastermind group for Joe Polish. And there are techniques that he used in this package that could be used for like a consumer newsletter offer. It could be used for supplements. It could be, all that kind of stuff. So, getting your hands on world-class copywriter swipe files is anybody who understands this business the way we understand it would jump at the opportunity. And anyone who doesn't get it hasn't studied enough under the masters. So easy question to answer. Look, I just, Bill Jamie, who's one of the great copywriters of all time, I had this swipe file. I found like 30 copies of his like 270 packages. And I just sent one email to my list and I sold them out in like, a day.
Wow.
At $195 a piece. Now I got to figure out if I want to reprint them or not, because there's an appetite for this stuff. I've got 500 people on a waiting list for the new edition of Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. And the new edition, I have some swipes in the back. So there is an incredible appetite among the people who know what they're doing, both as copywriters and marketers, for having a swipe file and a collection of the best of the best. So I hope I made my case.
Yeah, and how good is a 14-year and 10-year control? Is that pretty good in your experience?
It is good. Now, you have to be careful with that. The caveat is that it sounds like this person said they tried and tried and tried to beat it. There was something years and years ago. It was called the Axel Anderson Award, which was one of the trade magazines gave this award, and it was for long-standing controls. So, the Axel Anderson Award is awarded to such and such package because it's been in control for 14 years. The problem with that is if it's a mailer or a marketer who's not testing enough, having a control for 14 years is not the only criteria. The criteria is having a control for 14 years, and we tested every year for 14 years to try to beat it and couldn't beat it with great other copywriters, with other world-class copy. That's the test. So make sure that, and this is a good piece of advice for anybody. So we've already established that Scott's 14-year or 20-year, how many year controls stood the test of time against all comers, against a very heavy testing environment. But I have to tell you that there are other people who don't test enough, and having long-standing controls is more about laziness than the power of that control. But the answer is yes, of course, that Scott basically, beat the system, so to speak.
Nice. Cool. So let's get into the ad breakdown. Hey, this is Big Jason. So what's included with Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2, and how do you get it? All right. So number 1, you're going to get Scott's original Shortcut Copywriting Secrets course. You're going to get his original Hottest Sales Letters, Volume 1. Plus, you're also going to get his missing magic order form. In Volume 1 of his Hottest Sales Letters, he mentioned an order form that he lost that worked like magic for a promotion he did for Gary Halbert. Well, I found it, and you're going to get it. Plus, you're going to get the all-new Hottest Sales Letters Volume 2. This is over 200 pages of home runs, including 4 controls. 3 of the controls are still running today because his longest running client can't find anyone who can beat Scott still today. All right, so who's going to be breaking these ads down with me? Clayton Makepeace, John Carlton, David Deutsch, Adam Carroll, Colin Chung, David Garfinkel, Brian Kurtz, $1 Million Mike Morgan, Harlan Kilstein, Kevin Rogers, Sammy Markowitz, Caleb O'Dowd, Bon Halbert, and many more. All right, so how do you get your hands on Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2? Well, you go to shortcutcopywritingsecrets.com and get on the wait list, because I'm going to be releasing this very soon. All right, and once you opt in, you're going to get a very special recording from a expensive Gary Halbert seminar. I found this in a promotion that Scott wrote for Gary. I was cleaning out his apartment here in Austin for his family, and it's a killer message from No Sex Gary, a real honest-to-God way to get rich with direct marketing, okay? So you're going to get that just for opting into the wait list, all right? And then on the thank you page in the welcome email, there's going to be a link for my private Facebook group for Shortcut Copywriting Secrets version 2. Join that, because I'm going to be releasing some rare audios and interviews and some information that I found in Scott's stuff that's really cool that I'm not going to release anywhere else. So once again, this is Big Jason. Thank you so much for helping me continue Scott's legacy. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Scott was my best friend. So go to shortcutcopywritingsecrets.com, and I'll see you there.
Sure, actually, so I got into response in 2000, 2001, and stumbled upon this whole world of the copywriting Gary Halbert, the Gary Halbert letter. Actually, old cassettes that I still. Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that's the copy right here. The Gary Halbert Ask Me question is next to it. Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets is next to it.